Hi everyone, it's already 2 o'clock. Could you do me the favor of moving forward so that when latecomers arrive, they have seats to go to straight from the door? Come on over, no one's gonna bite. Thank you so much. Oh, I love it. Everyone participates. Thank you so much, everybody, for being so cooperative. This is beautiful. All right. Once again, time check is 2 o'clock. If you still have other colleagues, peers, classmates that you want to invite to this particular event, it is not too late to message them. For our audience online, hello, welcome here. We are anticipating your participation in a bit. So, just to start things off, I would like to introduce myself. I am Regina Regala, an assistant professor of the Department of Broadcast Communications, and I will be your host for this afternoon for our event, Arts-Based Research and Practice, a case study of the Oracle Index. All right. So this particular event is, well, spearheaded by the Communication Research Department of the College of Media and Communication of the University of the Philippines, Diliman. It is also contiguous to our 60th anniversary College of Media and Communication celebration and the celebrations of the Communication Research Department's 50th anniversary. Yes, beautiful. Dami. Okay. So anyway, I believe there's also a partnership with our UP Diliman Office of Research and Publication, and of course with Aarhus University School of Culture and Society and their Department of Anthropology. So, just to get the ball rolling, let's start with our opening remarks. I would like to introduce, to speak for us, Professor Julian Tessa Baldoco Bello, the chairperson of the Department of Communication and Research. A round of applause.
Perfect. Magandang hapon sa ating lahat. Thank you very much for being here. To those who attended the morning event, thank you for coming back. As a very creative person in a very serious left-brained academic setting, I find myself longing for right-brained activities. I long talaga. I long for more gut feel, flow, intuitive activities. I long for colors. Di naman masyadong halata, no? I long for colors, colorful stories, texture data, embodied vibing through analysis, writing, and sharing of research results. Although we are in the College of Media and Communication, we are in that area upstairs where we don't do production, so we don't have the privilege of creating inside formal academic structures. So all of these longings are just are just materials in my daydreams. So it follows that I am excited about today's event. Arts-based research and practice are opening doors to radical epistemology, subverting long-held notions of objectivity and structured scientific inquiry. As a scholar, I have always been a spectator from the outside, always curious, sometimes shy, but always willing to be mentored and invited. The invitation has not happened yet. Maybe something will come out of this today. I would like to be invited. Plugging myself here unapologetically. As a community, we are continuously being invited to open unknown doors, to go back to pathways we have begun and forgotten along the way, like my colleague, Dr. Randy J. Solis, has always been a theater person. And this year, it's one of his projects to go back to dancing, to theater. He calls it Balik Sayaw, Balik in that kind of project. Hashtag I'm envious. Some of us have an active artistic life, like Professor Paraga's here, who paints in watercolor and I believe acrylic too. So he manages to squeeze into his very busy academic life. Dr. Michelle Santo Tomas is our legitimate artist. Where is Michelle? She's a painter. She's a visual artist. She's a painter. She sculpts. We also have Shine. Where's Shine? Shine has her musical instruments and, of course, her singing and her vibe. And all other colleagues I know, play with some sort of creative secret life. I myself doodle with all sorts of creative projects that consume me, but also make me feel guilty when academic backlogs pile up. Like, what the heck am I doing with this thing here? There are, deadlines to meet. But the thing with art is that it has an insistent energy, right? It stalks you. It gnaws on our feet, makes us toss and turn, causes palpitations during insomnia nights, and these have come more often. There is deep creativity in how we weave samot-saring trabajo with many other tasks in and outside academia. Our ability to respond to ambiguities, the word I picked up this morning, brought about by limited resources, is telling of our ability to think outside the box and even cut the box into pieces, then rebuild these pieces from scratch. What is that if not creativity, right? We need more conversations about how we can respond to the calling of the arts and how our empirical frameworks can dance with the nuanced, a favorite word in the college, nuanced sophistication that arts-based research is ready to give. I would like to thank in advance our speakers, Stefan and Nestor, for this engagement, and to Janelle for opening many doors for us. Thank you very much, and good afternoon.
Thank you so much, Prof. Julian, for those opening remarks. Clearly, we have already set the playing field that we're working with, one that is not so used to creativity, to arts, but very much familiar with research and practice. So let's try to fill in those gaps today with the help of our speakers. Our speakers are now to be introduced. Let's start with Steffen Köhn, who is a filmmaker, a video artist, and associate professor at Aarhus University. Working across cinema, art, and ethnography, he explores alternative infrastructures and survival strategies in today's uneven socio-technical world. Next, we have Sir Nestor Siré, a Cuban multimedia artist based in Havana and in Amsterdam, whose transdisciplinary research explores how technological infrastructures shape everyday social life, and in turn, how they are shaped by it. So after that introduction, clearly, let's talk about structure. Our speakers, Sir Stefan and Sir Nestor, will be speaking first about their already completed projects. And then we'll go ahead into a Q&A or an open forum right after that. And then they'll pick up again and talk about their ongoing project, the one that was mentioned earlier today. Okay. And they will just continue with that talk. And then we'll open an open forum once again. Is that all right, guys? Beautiful. My advice is, as an audience, let's try to participate as best as we can. If you've already got questions, open that notes app. Write it in your notebook so that you've got something to ask later. We've got 2 rounds of it. Thank you so much. And without further ado, take it away, sirs.
Cool. Thank you so much. Yeah, so we also wanted to kind of throw some ideas at you why we think that kind of a research-based art practice is also relevant for kind of doing academic work. But to introduce ourselves, I thought I just want to mention how we met. No, so I'm an anthropologist. Nestor is an artist, and we basically met 6 years ago in Cuba, where I was doing ethnographic research on emergent digital culture. And also, as many of you might know, Cuba for a long time was completely disconnected from the internet. So people had to kind of make do with kind of offline data practices, data sharing practices, grassroots computer nets emerged. I was in Cuba to do an ethnographic study on that. And there I met Nestor, who as an artist actually works very, very similar to an anthropologist, maybe without knowing it back then. But Nestor's art was also very much based on interviewing people, engaging with communities. And this is basically how we teamed up. And since then, we've produced a couple of works together on these like kind of Cuban tech communities. And we just want to like kind of introduce these projects today.
Yeah, like thank you very much for everybody to come in today. And I was already like very interested in the Cuban reality digital practice. I am not an academic. Huh?
It doesn't
Doesn't
we
change.
cannot change the slides.
It's slow. It's slow. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. We understand now. We understand now.
Okay.
I will say from my side, of course, I understand like the research more from an art perspective. This means that I use some methodology and some process that are close to anthropology, but I am not an academic. I am more an artist. But working in collaboration with Stefan was like a very like super interesting point for me to understand like, you know, these like barriers and play through these borders. Also, like we doing this a lot. We'll come in some time to the academic world to present our project, but we also go to the art field to, you know, presenting this like research in more like art forms.
Yeah. And just to like give you a very quick introduction into like kind of the cultural setting where our like kind of works that we're going to talk about take place. This is what you see here is one of these like famous Wi-Fi parks that for a lot of like Cubans were the first access to the internet in 2015. The government, after a long time of hesitation, should an authoritarian government really give its populace like access to the internet, and what might be the political ramifications of this? No, in 2015, Cuba finally like kind of opened these like kind of public Wi-Fi spots. It was like kind of scratch card based. So I think at the beginning you paid the incredible sum of like $5 for like 1 hour of connection. No, but what happened is that people discovered like social media, people reconnected with like kind of the Cuban diaspora in Miami or in Madrid, and these Wi-Fi parks became this like kind of very like kind of public places. No, 2018, mobile internet was introduced, and this like kind of really opened the floodgates for like kind of social media. But before even these two events, Cubans also had other ways to like kind of access some form of the internet or share like kind of data. No, one of these is like El Paquete Semanal, which is a so-called sneaker net, an offline internet, which works in a way that people who have privileged access to the internet because they work at universities or government facilities group together, spend the nights downloading everything that is new on the internet, new Netflix shows, new HBO series, new pop music, new pirated software. And then they compile these like 1 terabyte collections that are weekly released. And there's like really a subscription system. You can have a paquetero come to your house once a week. You pay him $2. And then you just copy whatever you want, and then the next person in line gets it. Or you go to a neighbor. Do I have a photo? No. Or you go to a neighborhood data copy store that are really ubiquitous as well, with a USB stick or a hard drive, and you pay a couple of pesos for just whatever media file you want. Another, do you want to?
Well, before to go to SNet, also like, you know, it's a lot of parallels between Cuba and Philippines, as you can see. The weekly packet is like a very close to what we understand like a pisonet aesthetically. They look like a space with computers that you can come and just like pay with like a very little money to some like digital, materials. I think the difference is like weekly packet doesn't have internet.
But both are like kind of sachet access to the internet.
Exactly.
No?
And for example, like the Wi-Fi park, they create this like kind of like in Cuba, this system when a person coming with a computer and they find like a way to share the connection from one device to multiple people, just to try to pay less and have more people like connected. That is very similar to piso Wi-Fi that are so popular here. I think it's like, for me, we are also, both of us are very excited about the parallels, and the project that we are talking at the end is like connecting that.
Yeah.
Talking about SNet.
Yeah, SNet is a grassroots computer network that spans basically the whole city of Havana, and at its heydays connected like tens of thousands of people via these like kind of Wi-Fi antennas, but also like kind of Ethernet cables strung across the street. And it's like a huge computer network that is completely disconnected from the internet. It basically began in like kind of the gamer scene in Havana. So people started like kind of playing video games and like kind of doing LAN parties, and then like kind of began like kind of to connect their computers within the neighborhood, and then it grew. There's like kind of a very we studied like kind of the like kind of bottom-up social organization of that network, know how it actually works, how do people collaborate to keep this network alive. This is one of the 9 main pillars, one of the main like kind of connection nodes, and you see every antenna can connect like around 200 people. So this is a massive like kind of distribution point.
Yeah, like this is like maybe one of the bigger mass network in the world. Like this is like massive. We are talking about thousands of people connecting in this like community, and it's literally the kind of like a version of like internet. Of course, it's mainly focused in gaming, and this was like one of the reasons to create the this like community and the net. But they extend to a lot of different services. Like for example, like at the beginning of the net, they create a kind of like a Facebook version, like to try to create like social like connections and social profiles online in these like offline communities. They using also SNet to sharing weekly packet folders and media coming from like more focusing entertainment. But the beginning of this net was like mostly okay, we are jumping. Okay.
Okay, so this is basically the context we're working in. No? But before we go a bit closer into the project, some ideas of why we actually think it's important to approach these topics not only from like kind of an ethnographic research, but also from like kind of some art making perspective. First of all, we believe that like kind of doing projects with and about art projects with and about this community is a method that basically fits the field sites. No, because we're working with very media saturated environments. No, we're like kind of working with we're like kind of collecting data that are already multimodal. No, when we're like kind of doing interviews, when we're documenting these phenomena with videos or photos, when we're taking voice notes. We're already like kind of producing multimedia. And also for me as an anthropologist, it's kind of the logical step to like kind of not translate that back into academic text, but like kind of engage with these like data that are already multimodal, also in some kind of multimodal form. No, also, I mean, as you all know, academic writing is a very lonely exercise. No, but we're like kind of, or I was always like kind of craving for some kind of collaborative, like kind of co-creative process. No, and I think like kind of engaging in like kind of an artistic project, being it a documentary film, a video installation or whatever, allows you to engage with people, no, like kind of to become co-creative with them, to integrate them into your kind of projects, no, and then also along media forms and formats that these people engage with in like kind of their everyday lives as well, no. Another thing is that we work a lot with people who are actually experts, who are very good in what they're doing, who are media makers or computer network administrators or whatever themselves. No? So we're working with like kind of skilled technologists, no? And this is why we also want to treat these people not only as like informants, no, as people we draw information from, but we also want to like kind of use their skills and integrate these into like kind of our projects, no? What we also learned in like kind of doing these projects that we're talking about very soon is participation and co-creation is also a form of like kind of data collection. No, so if you're working with people, for example, in Cuba, and you're like kind of developing projects together. For example, we developed a video game together. We're going to talk about with like kind of a local indie game studio. No, and starting such a year or months-long process, also you learn a lot about what are actually the restrictions these people navigate in. No, what does it mean to run an independent video game business in Cuba? No, what are like kind of the technological infrastructural restrictions? No, so participation is also, or co-creation is also this form of like kind of data generation. And then also it's also an ethical thing, no, like kind of collaboration, shared authorship. Crediting our participants as professionals, no, and not just as interlocutors, is also for us a way of like also giving back something, no? Also like kind of producing something that not only circulates in an academic ivory tower, but maybe that also finds some local audience or some local meanings. No, so we also do these projects to reach audiences also beyond academia, be it in art spaces, in museums, online, but also then locally in Cuba with the communities we've been working with. Yeah, maybe we talk about our first project, which is called Packet Town, a video game that simulates this El Paquete Semanal infrastructure.
To understand like what is like the weekly packet is like, you know, we like most like this idea, these concepts become like with computers and hard drive, but you know, like the most interesting about the weekly packet is not just that it's like a, you know, like a folder structure with digital information. It's also the human infrastructure behind this idea of like distribution of digital materials or entertainment materials. And to understand like a little bit more about that, we need to go like very like, you know, from the beginning of the revolution and understand a little bit what was happening in Cuba at this time. This is, for example, like how the weekly packet look today. And it's literally like a folder structure, but will be like the experience to navigate to the weekly packet right now will be almost like a try to navigate for first time to internet, like no knowing what happened. But after do you understand that it's a kind of like a structural folder that is like is the same every week, and do you know like how to find the things that you want to see. Yeah, weekly packet look like that. This is also like a photo that we'll take from our project Memoria that we are talking more about that in the future. But this is, for example, like the process of copy. The goal of the weekly packet is make as much versions of as much copies of the digital materials as possible. And we are talking about literally a phenomenon that like connect like 1 million of people, like maybe 9 million of people. This is like also for us, it's very interesting to understand this alternative technology, not just as a kind of like the solution because you don't have the internet. It's also like very interesting to see these realities as an older way to understand digital distribution, like more local, more human, and more
basically
connect.
People creating their own infrastructure, no? So most of these data are downloaded in Havana, and then they goes via like kind of local, like kind of nodes, local computer shops. They basically within like kind of one day they've been spreading through the whole country, no? Like kind of people transport them through the national bus network to like kind of local nodes in like kind of bigger cities, and from there like kind of it travels even to like kind of the remotest village. So it's a very, very effective form of distribution infrastructure.
Even in times of hurricanes, like weekly packet not stop. Like they find a way to get
even during the pandemic.
Yeah. And this is like how a weekly packet, like, you know, copy point will look like. Like sometimes are very sophisticated, like, you know, and with conditionary air, like here, and like a lot of like movie posters on the screens, and sometimes are just like pisonet places that are just like in the corner of the street.
Yeah. So what the initial idea that we had of like kind of creating an art project around this is that this is a Cinemania for Cuatro K, the local data copy shop that we always frequented when we wanted to like copy new films. And what surprised us, like looking at the content of El Paquete, was that it's not only media, not only film, not only TV series, but also a lot of pirated software and also video games and mobile phone applications, no? And when we were studying the content, the content a bit, and like kind of what a recurring thing was that a lot of Cubans were actually really obsessed about was like business simulation games, no? So what was super popular during that time was like Resort Tycoon, Farmville, these kinds of games, no? Which is like kind of very peculiar in a context where like kind of private economy is still very, very much limited, no? So at some moment we had this idea, why not create a business simulation game that explains this whole El Paquete infrastructure? Like how would that look like if you as a player, you would run your own like kind of neighborhood data copying shop? That was like kind of our starting point.
And this is how we'll create like Packet Town. Packet Town basically is like try to understand the history of the weekly packet. You know, I was explaining like that the last step of the well, maybe I can go to directly. Yeah, the last step of no, we'll need to explain the packet Town right now. Well, like the history of the weekly packet is very interesting because like we need to understand that, like right now, the computers and the hard drive are just like the last step of the phenomenon. But at the beginning was books. Like after the Cuban Revolution, we have this like, the Cuban government control everything. Like they privatize, like they take all the privatization inside and they just like nationalize all the business. And for example, like my grandfather was a person that at this time had like a bookstore before the revolution. With the revolution, my grandfather take all the books to home and he started to have like a kind of like a rent business with the ground when he like find a way to not do it public, but keeping renting the books. And this was the beginning. Like what the big problem is like what happened when all the clients in the neighborhood already read all the books. You need to find new books, but with a country completely blocked and shut up from the international options. Like the only option was like try to find an older person like my grandfather in another city to exchange books and just like have like a new books. And this is the beginning of the net that connect all the cities in Cuba. With the democratization of technology, slow like in Cuba happened, but very slowly and like late. After books was like a videotapes. After videotapes, we'll have USB like disc, CDs and after CDs, computers and hard drive.
Yeah. So what our idea for the game was that as a player, you basically, so we really wanted to make that point that there is this continuity within like kind of media distribution, no? From the books in the 1970s to the VHS cassettes of the 1990s to the DVDs, self-burnt DVDs of the 2000s, to like kind of the hard drive based system now. So in our game, you're basically creating your own business here with like kind of the user, and then you start basically playing in the just let it run, and then you basically start playing in the 1970s, no? And then basically through the game, you can basically follow like kind of 50 years of media history in Cuba. So in the first level, what's very typical for like kind of private businesses in Cuba is that there is no rent market for housing, which means that most shops are actually in people's like hallways. No, so this is also what we try to kind of recreate. No, so you're basically starting to in the 1970s renting out like kind of books, making money, and then throughout the years, throughout the game, you can like kind of reinvest this money and like kind of buy your first VHS recorder, copy films. So you're basically through that game, you're basically following like kind of or going through like kind of 50 years of media history. And we're actually, yeah, exactly. So you grow your business, you can invest in a Wi-Fi antenna at some point.
Exactly. Like the video game was like a very like very interesting strategy for us, like because like when you watch a movie or a documentary, it's like a very passive like experience. With video games, you really like this type of video game that you are making decisions inside. You can have like another type of experience that is more active, and we'll think about that, like how to create this like a more like a deep experience through the idea of like not just like a wash the history, just like trying to live and create your own history, and but also like with a very with very deep focus on like documentary, like creating a documentation, like a real documentation of the reality.
Yeah, so we interviewed a lot of people who were in this business already since the 1970s, like Nestor's grandfather and uncle. No, we tried to like kind of understand what was the most popular media that was circulated through these informal networks, and we also tried to really be very precise with the kind of technology that people use. No, because in the socialist system there was only one particular type of TV that was available, or one particular type of like kind of ventilator. So when in the game you can level up like kind of your business and your equipment, we really try to like kind of be very accurate with like kind of the depiction.
Even we'll create like per years like a kind of like a ethnographic comments that clients was like a saying when they get inside the business, to try to understand what was the popular like media at this time.
Yeah, and then so most of our projects have been shown only outside of Cuba because it's quite limited. Also in art institutions, the like kind of the technology you have in the last years. I mean, and even in Havana, you only had electricity half of the day, so we always have run into problems showing our work in Cuba. But with this video game, we actually really try to do something that also has some kind of local relevance. So we did a lot of presentations in the game in these local youth computer clubs that Fidel Castro initiated in the 1980s to to teach like ICT or computer technology to like kind of young people. So we did a whole island tour with this. We also did a local like kind of small tournaments and like kind of designed 3D printed this like kind of little statue. And outside of Cuba, in more like a museum context, we showed the game in such a like kind of recreated
in this case, like
point.
The solution, like the idea was like creating a kind of like representing the copy point of a weekly bucket in a space, and try to create this kind of like immersive experience when people, an audience, can see and play the game through these like tablets that was like available, but also like create in a very like, you know, minimal this idea of like how the weekly bucket point will look. But also the video game at the beginning was like available in like Apple Store and Google Play. Through the, you know, the process of like presenting the game in different places, like the rules from the United States change, and the game is not anymore available in Apple Store because of the embargo. But you know, we have like an Android version still there.
And within the game, we of course circulated the game within El Paquete Semanal, within that infrastructure that it portrays, basically. Next project. Then we also did a project about SNet, about this grassroots computer network in Havana. As we said, SNet started very much from like kind of the gamer scene, from like kind of LAN parties. That was like kind of the source of it. But then it like kind of grew and grew and grew. We're very fascinated about like kind of the self-governance, of the members of this network. Here you see, for example, the very creative anti-robbery devices people have built. Like kind of Wi-Fi is a very weak signal. So Wi-Fi doesn't travel very well through like kind of the built environment. So all these antennas have to be like kind of outside on these like kind of big poles. And Cuba being a tropical country, they are also very easily suffer from like kind of sunburn, theft, or like hurricanes. So there's all these community infrastructures also to replace the equipment. People have to pay a certain membership fee. Node administrators are like kind of managing these like kind of communal funds. This is like kind of really what we like kind of try to understand. Also, the software infrastructure is very fascinating because that computer network you don't really access via like kind of Google or some kind of search engine as we access the global internet. But what has become the main infrastructure for using it is TeamSpeak. TeamSpeak is a bit of an outdated voice over IP software that also comes from the gaming world. So people playing World of Warcraft would use TeamSpeak to talk with their guildmates, with each other. But in that network, people are actually using it as a kind of social network. So people put a lot of work in their personal profiles. Putting here little like kind of icons to identify them as administrators or their social role in the network. And they're also using these audio channels, for example, to do like kind of radio shows. So there's whole DJ programs, open forums, like kind of the political or the self-governance meetings all happen through that network. So we're also interested in like kind of, the bottom-up software infrastructure.
This literally create a kind of like a subculture on this like kind of like a, you know, that remember the beginning of the internet, and also like we need to understand that in countries that you need to, you know, to do it everything, like it's nothing simple. Like this means that you need to understand technology, like minimum base, like understanding technology from a hardware and software perspective. This means that, you know, we can like all these phenomena, also the weekly packet and the SNet, they are like based on like software and hardware that they are being created in Cuba using recycled material, reusing material, or just like, you know, hacking or coding.
Here you see one of the most central servers of the network. And you see it's like kind of very often outdated and repurposed technology. So as an art project, we did an interactive installation, which is called Fragile Connections. And we basically recreated like kind of these tower structures. So we got old antennas from administrators, rebuilt these like kind of antennas, made this ASCII graphics of that like kind of depicts one of these like kind of socialist housing blocks on which these antennas, because they're the highest buildings in Havana, on which these typically rest. And then on these three screens, what you see is actually like kind of a focus group interview that we did with three administrators of like kind of the network, and we had them basically, we screen recorded them playing like kind of the 3 most popular video games, while on the audio channel of TeamSpeak that is normally used for discussions or for radio shows, we basically staged this like kind of focus group interview where they were basically talking about how they encountered the network, how the self-government process work. So like kind of the documentary, the heart of the piece is actually this focus group interview.
And also like different perspective, because it's like, of course, they have like a general, like a structure of like a power inside the net. And we'll have like a, a main, like a system of systems and usuarios, like normal like users.
Yeah, and the English subtitles for this interview we also did in this like kind of typical like kind of TeamSpeak aesthetics. Yeah, we also there's also an online component of it. So we created this like kind of QR code where you can basically access from the gallery a small part of the network to just get a little bit of an idea of what's inside. So you can basically just you can see it here. You use the QR code. You can just basically browse through the most popular pirated games that you can play via the network here in Juegos. You can also it also works a bit like Netflix. You can also stream like kind of films. There's Minecraft. This is the code of conduct everyone has to deal with. So we wanted to via this QR code with your mobile phone, you can basically at least have like kind of a small taste of the infrastructure or how it looks and feels like. Also, some of our own research materials, photos we made accessible via that.
And all this system was like an offline node that will create also in collaboration with some of the means from SNet, and was like a kind of like a completely offline system that also reproduce the idea of SNet itself.
Exactly. And then for the very last thing, we like kind of made these like kind of sticker sets with like kind of the logos that like kind of people use to like kind of self-identify within that network. So you can basically symbolically also become a member of the network and identify yourself as being in a relationship, looking for a partner, being a Real Madrid or Barcelona fan.
Even like Android or Apple usuarium and things like that. I myself, I am a gamer also. I was like a part of SNet. And this was like one of the things that most like, fascinate me is like, this like, even like they create his own language inside this like culture, like, and I think because like, the gamer community of Cuba was like a completely offline, like this is like sometimes have like some parallelism with what is happening in this like a global gaming community, but sometimes it's like a very, very, very like peculiar ways to understand gaming and what is a gamer in Cuba. And in this part of the project, we'll try to share like this reality, like this inside reality.
Another community in Havana with which we collaborated a lot is Copincha, and Copincha is the first DIY hacker maker space in Havana where like kind of people come together to repair things, to teach each other about like kind of repair practices, but also to like kind of build stuff. They have like kind of very fascinating project of like kind of building like kind of small like kind of solar power based like kind of networks. And this is, like kind of Cuba can be like kind of is in a lot of sense like kind of a very like kind of depressing place in the last years. I mean, the economy is really like kind of on the verge of collapse, constant power cuts. But we felt that kind of in this community, there's actually a lot of like kind of forward thinking, people experimenting with like kind of 3D printing, inviting like kind of Cuban sci-fi authors to discuss like kind of future ideas. So this is actually the communities that we found that were like kind of most like kind of forward thinking. And through this community, we also got in touch with like kind of a circle of like kind of Cuban science fiction writers. And at some point, we decided to like kind of produce a project together with one of them. And this project is called Memoria, and it's a 4-channel video installation. And the idea basically emerged when Eric Mota, who is a Cuban cyberpunk sci-fi writer, and we basically, talked about like kind of our favorite like kind of sci-fi stories. And we started talking about Johnny Mnemonic, this like kind of William Gibson story that basically defined defined cyberpunk as a sci-fi genre. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that short story, but there's also a famous 1990s film with Keanu Reeves. And the story is basically about this guy who lives in this like kind of future neo-Tokyo cyberpunk world, and he has a hard drive implanted in his head. And he basically works as like kind of a data courier who brings sensitive data from A to B, data that companies don't want to put on the internet because they're like kind of too risky, and they don't want them to be like kind of pirated. And we basically got this idea that this guy is actually almost like a Cuban paquetero, no? Almost like one of these guys who like kind of goes from house to house to deliver like kind of new data, no? So, and then this idea emerged that we basically enlisted Eric Motta, this writer, to write like kind of an adaptation of that short story, John Mnemonic, and translate it to like kind of the Cuban context. That was basically our starting point. And instead of doing a short film, we decided to do like kind of a 4-channel video installation that really like kind of immersively like kind of sits you like kind of into the narrative. Yeah, this is from another installation that we did. We also worked with members of the Skopincha collective to design like kind of the props and the accessories and the costumes, also of like kind of recycled materials. So yeah, so it was like kind of a fiction sci-fi project, but very much based on like kind of local designs. No, so we are basically enlisting these people to think with us about the future or possible like kind of future Cuban cyberpunk aesthetics. That was a bit our approach.
And also, like, you know, Cuba is already super cyberpunk aesthetic. Like the reality itself is already like, you know, was already there, and we'll try to use in that. Like in this way, I think our project in general have like this point that you know, documentaries is like a very important tool that we'll use. And also we was like working with like a professional actors, but also like real paqueteros that are acting for us.
Exactly.
In the project.
This guy, for example, is
For
a real
example.
paquetero. So just we don't so this is how the installation like be like kind of immersed in this like kind of four screen setup, characters talking to each other across the screen.
It's an immersive multimedia video installation, like slash experimental cinema, I think.
Exactly.
And the idea was like literally we'll produce we'll shoot the movie like with this idea of like characters are talking each other, and the people, like the audience, are in the middle, and you move to understand what is happening.
And even though it's like kind of a fiction thing, no, it is grounded in reality. So for example, one workshop. So what was the fascinating thing also with Copincha, and they got a bit of like kind of traction. So people learned about it online, and a lot of like Americans or people who came as tourists to Cuba got in contact with them and actually offered to like kind of do workshops. No, so for example, one workshop was from this American guy, Michael Laufer from Four Thieves Winterguard, and he was basically running a biohacking workshop together with like kind of Copincha members. And during that workshop, he basically implanted for like kind of the Copincha core members an NFID chip into between here the fingers, so that they could like kind of open the door to that space. So there is this like kind of grounding in like kind of cyberpunk ideas of, you know, neuro implants, body technology fusions.
Also Copincha is like at the first hacker space in Havana, one of the first in the country, and it was like the space for try to understand innovation, like recycle, reuse in a very high level. Like there will like, I don't know, build like 3D printing plastic machines using recycled materials, reusing technology. And this was like another aspect of the project. Like we, for the, you know, Memoria have like a base video that is the center of the project, and the way that we'll share with the audience the narrative, but also like we'll create this device that is a nodo, is a computer that contain server, but completely offline, that contain the 4-channel videos, but also contain a virus that is like a changing, and we can say killing the video like every day. For us was like a very interesting, because the main actor and in the history have like one of the problems of the narrative is like he put too much like information, too much like gigabytes in the brain, and he start to losing like his own memories and start to just like having like a kind of like Hollywood actors as his family face and things like that.
Yeah, so we had we enlisted one of the Copincha programmers to build us this like kind of virus that basically destroys the video over the course of the exhibition. So during the exhibition, you can like kind of adapt that software to the length of the exhibition, and with every day, like kind of the video quality like kind of degenerates a bit. So you have so it's almost like a living installation when you come to the show. On the opening, you still get the like kind of the clear, crisp image, but if you come later to the show, then you basically only get to see this.
And from a very technical perspective, it's very interesting because like the virus that will create is literally killing the video, putting more information. Like they take like random friends from another areas in the movie and just like putting in a random place, and it's like it's a very interesting metaphor from what is happening with cancer, for example. Like it's like over putting over information in the body, and this was like a more or less the process that we'll use to try to reproduce this idea of like and also like answer questions like what is happening with the life of a digital entity or a digital like presence.
That was the completed projects that we wanted to. Yeah, we're already running a bit over time, but we thought before we talk about our new crypto-related work in progress project, maybe there is some questions already about this already completed stuff.
So this is a round of applause. Yes. So this is the first round of question and answer. If anyone has any curiosities, I'm sure that the entire series of completed projects has gotten you excited. We have a microphone in the middle of the room, and you can just come up and ask a question. Or if there's anyone online, I'm sure someone will just, in my earpiece, they will tell me what that question is. Supposedly, like the cyberpunk. Or they could be shy. Okay, Sir Janelle, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Would be the difference between art-based project and research-based art project? Is there an ideological difference, or is it just a play on the name?
Yeah, good question. I mean, art can basically be everything, no? And I think a lot of people, when they think of art, particularly in comparison to research, is that it's like kind of this intuitive process, no? Like kind of art as this window to the soul. And I think both Nestor and I we're very far away from these romantic notions of what art can be, no? For us, art is very much about like kind of community engagement and also about remixing different like kind of ideas, maybe bringing like kind of things we observed in like kind of different communities, like a sci-fi novel from the 80s and a Cuban reality, bringing that into some kind of coalition, like
Coalescent?
yeah, what's the word? Collision, no?
Yeah,
exactly. No, and then see what's happened. So yeah, I think the art we are interested in, it always deals with like social issues, with community, with stuff, with local forms of creativity anyway. And also we're not really taking the thing out of ourselves. We're more engaging with stuff that we see in the world, no?
Yeah, but also like, exactly the interesting about art is like, if a person sit down and say art is something, like, don't believe it, because art is like whatever do you want that be. Like, I think it's super legitimate also, all form of art. I coming from a context that is very traditional. I am myself a painter like from a school, but I get boring painting all my life. And I think it's like, definitely I am more interested in the type of art that is more like a creating questions and changing the way that you understand reality and understand yourself. That art that is a kind of like an extension of my own opinions and my soul, in a way that I am very interested in, like, be able to explain everything I want to say and be able also to understand these realities that are around me, not just reproduce the realities that are around me. And because of that, I think even like before to doing like collaborating with Stefan or understand what was like anthropology and social science, I was already like doing processes that are very close to what an anthropology do in communities, like basically like doing interviews, like try to understand deeply before to doing my project.
I mean, Nestor showed me videos that he filmed when he was 18, 19, 20 years old, where he basically documented repair process, know how your uncle repaired his car or something. So I think you always had this interest in what in local forms of creativity.
I was like having this connection with, this idea that reality, is like get over fiction in a way. Like sometimes reality is more interesting that whatever we can imagine. And this is literally happened with us in the last project that we are sharing right now. But also, like I think the big difference between academic and art is like at some point you also like think about how the body of the audience will feel in the space in relation with all the elements that you are presenting there. Like I think like social science and academic is like very focusing, of course, in text and sometimes like video, but it's very mathematic. And sometimes we are like debating about, what is the connection of this like a specific material and color and also the memory of this material that we are taking from reality and reconnecting in this space and curating all this like a physical element and how the body interact with that and more freedom, I would say.
Oh, that's such an extensive response. You guys are so excited about everything you're talking about. And honestly, that is such a great disposition to be at. I actually have a question. So sorry, guys. Okay, take your time. My question is really maybe a bit of an investment about the community that we have here in the College of Media and Communication, which, as Prof. Julian said a while ago, is very left-brained, very straightforward, very, very research-based. So I guess the question I guess being so preoccupied with this notion of objectivity really has majority of us, even my students in the creative class, a bit scared of pursuing a creative but still critical project. Because you guys have excitement already. Was there a particular process to move from fear to excitement, or like from discomfort to comfort that you guys went through?
Good question.
Yeah.
I think I never had that fear because I luckily come from anthropology, no, and I think anthropology as a social science always had this like kind of openness towards the arts, literature, filmmaking. No, anthropology has like kind of basically a history of like kind of ethnographic documentary filmmaking that goes back to the 19th century, no? So and photography as well. So I think I academically grew up or was socialized in a very permissive environment, so to say. But I mean, I think I only see more and more openness throughout the disciplines. Whenever I go to an academic conference these days, they have an adjacent exhibition, a film program. Film scholars are more and more like kind of doing video essays instead of only writing text. No, so I think I think we've made a lot of progress in that regard.
I will say drink more coffee, maybe, and just like to have this energy. No, but it's also like like it's better to say sorry that excuse me. I will just go through like the process and make mistake is like the best you can do to understand more yourself and have this like energy to create, I think.
Oh, okay. We've got a question. Thank you, Enzo. Go ahead.
I actually have two, sorry. So, hello. This is for one for each speaker. So,
Wow.
for Sir Con, how do we know when we've mapped out a demographic or trend? And is there a moment where we know we've covered everything or covered enough?
In a research project process, I mean, good question. I always feel I have my research project is very much, and I think that is what anthropology or ethnography is supposed to mean, like kind of long-term engagement. So I think it's important to spend a lot of time in the field. And then I think you often reach a point of saturation when people, when people are always telling you like kind of the same stuff, then you kind of at some point know, oh yeah, this is actually what preoccupies people or what people find important. So for me, it has a lot to do with like time dedication.
And for Sir Siré, yeah, okay. As an artist, what elements of reality or the demographic do you know to keep for the project?
Do you what? I'm sorry.
Sorry. So when you're as an artist, what elements of reality or the demographic that you're covering do you know to keep for the project that you're
Yeah,
working?
like good question also. Depends of each project, I think. We are trying to, we'll write a lot of academic articles also, sometime together. And these are like different language. For example, like our like way to like present our ideas is like doing a conference is like a perfect space to do it that, but an exhibition in a space will be a different like a shoe with a different language, but also like a video format or a video game, like depends of the reality and what is the we always try to have like the mind questions on the mind comments in our project, and depending of the format or the media that we'll decide to use, we'll try to understand what is the best way to connect with that. I mean, like but basically like the process of research is always like very academic at the beginning, and after that it's just like I try to understand what will be like the comment that we'll want to do from this like a reality, but it's different each time, I think.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. Paunahan na lang po sa mic. Sorry po. It's because we're streaming, so the audio does have to be heard.
Okay. Hi, Stefan. Hi, thank you. It's great that you're talking about your ethnographic experiences, your experiences in the field. I see a lot of my qualitative analysis students here. And just last week, we were talking about ethnographic participant observation. Nakinig ba kayo? O, di ba? We were talking about ethnographic participant observation, and I hope that my students got to hear more about more creative ways of doing ethnography. It's not just textual, it's not just about documenting things, it's also expressing things, not necessarily verbally, but also through artistic means. So, my question is based on your response to the earlier question, it's clear that there's a delineation between the arts and the research. Like, you know, when you are assuming an artist's hat or when you're assuming a researcher's hat. And sometimes you would refer to instances where the two identities sort of merge, like when Nestor was starting to do research-based practices, for example, even though he identifies more as an artist. My question is, were there any instances when you felt like the two identities, the researcher identity and the artist identity, began to merge and become one?
I'm not even sure if I ask myself so often what hat am I wearing, because be, before I wrote my anthropology PhD, I also attended film school, so yeah, I think I've always been wearing like kind of both hats, and like kind of in the academic world, I'm now, as I have tenure, and I'm a bit more like kind of established, I also try to see what can I actually get away with, also in terms of publishing, in terms of like kind of creativity. So the last
Pushing the
article,
border.
exactly, yeah. So the last article we basically published about our research on Axie Infinity, this play-to-earn crypto game in Cuba, is basically has the structure of like kind of one of these like choose your own adventure game books, So the article basically puts you in the shoes of like kind of a Cuban like kind of gamer, and then the whole article is basically you taking decisions and then going on with read. But we submitted it to a peer-reviewed journal. I don't still know yet if we're gonna get it through peer review, but
it's happening.
we're trying. So yeah, we're like kind of trying to push the border between the both heads.
But this is also like a question that doesn't belong to our field. Like this question will never exist in our field, because whatever you are doing as an artist is possible. Like in our field, like whatever. The big question will be like if you put a lot of text in a installation or in a gallery, people will die of boring. And we'll need to find another like more excited like process to communicate information and try to reduce as much as we can the information. This was like, for example, like my big problem even before to doing collaboration with Stefan, because I think from also like from outside, I was this artist that put a lot of information in all the project. I remember doing installation with a lot of text, and at the end doesn't work very well for an art field. But yeah, like the border is doesn't exist in a way, and I think it's like it's more strong sometimes in academic world, but also I am always surprised how like do you push the border and the frontier and actually successful like put things there, no, in public in academic publications.
Yeah.
maybe we've got two more questions. Sorry.
Hello, my name is Jose Ardevilla. I am a teacher at UP College of Fine Arts. And before I ask my question, I have to register my gratitude for College of Media and Communication and Dr. Labor for organizing this arts research methodology, because over at Fine Arts, we have arts-based methodology as well. So it makes me happy that when I saw the roster outside, there are people from Cal, arts and letters, and music, etc. So let's build a coalition, because arts-based research is not that well known yet. You were discussing about no peer-reviewed journals. Let's make that happen. But first, I have a question regarding protocol. So part of my initiative as a professor of research, also in fine arts, I would tell my students, if you're doing work with community, you need to think about the ethics behind it. So you were discussing about sneaker internet, or like underground internet in Cuba. So it's great that they can download democracy, download all these files, but also there will be a digital retaliation and digital surveillance. So I was just wondering if there are protocols from your end regarding on how to mitigate that. Thank you.
I think Cuba, in that sense, is a very special case, because the surveillance is so pervasive, no, that I think people have this very inbuilt, like they exactly know where the line is and when they like kind of crossing it. Also, I mean, I think Nestor, as he is a Cuban citizen, can like kind of explain that better. I mean, I can only say from my perspective, for me, it was very important that I always work in Cuba with like kind of an official affiliation and not in somehow underground, no, but with like kind of an official research affiliation to like kind of, not put people into danger. And then with the communities we work with, what would you say in terms of?
Well, like the moral and ethic question is like super important. Also, this is something that I think constantly in my projects, even like before to doing collaborations, I was always very worried. Also, not just because putting people on dangers, like because of the government. Also, like the big comment about, as an artist, do you get there in this community? Do you get something? And at the end, like what is the ethic perspective about like taking this like piece of reality and creating a world that as an artist maybe you can sell or something like that. Also in relation with our market, is like this create another big problem. I think we are safe in this area because we are not commercial artists and we don't working with any institution, but also, presenting here is a way to present like, our names, and this is already like a kind of like economy behind that. It's very difficult, like working with realities as an academic, as an artist, will always like create like, you need to create your own like borders, and what are your ethical like comment about that. In relation specifically to like, protect people that we are working with, I will say that, well, depending, this is always like a question directly with this, a scenario specifically and a specific project that normally will never show faces, for example, like we're using a lot of different strategy that protect like people identities, but this is always like a question on the table, and it's a decision that is not our own decision.
But we're also not portraying any illegal things or activities, right?
Like, but also like in Cuba, everything is illegal. That this means
illegal.
Exactly. But another thing is like, I am also myself part of all these like communities or realities that we are engaging with. Most of the time in my work, I using my own experience. This is something that maybe is not completely good from academic
ethnography.
Exactly, but I am completely okay with that in an art field. And I'm using this as a strategy also to understand and have like maybe a more ethic and, approach. But also like, in a country like Cuba, when do you know that the government know everything? At some point, it's like, do you feel very free? Because it's like, they know everything. I don't need to like, be worried about that, because the presence of the power is just there.
Yeah.
Do you just like create, as Stefan say, like a very clear red line about things that you can say or not?
Yeah.
It's a lot of like outdoors, like self-censorship.
I think boiling it down to one sentence, our ethical approach is transparency, like being very clear with the people we work with where this work is going to end, no? And like kind of showing it to them before it's released. and co-authorship, no, really acknowledging these people in their roles as experts, as participants, and like kind of not stealing from them, not being these helicopter artists that like kind of land in a community, do a project for 3 weeks and like kind of disappear. So our projects have built on years and years and years of friendship with people.
And also be clear about our project is not changing the life of this community or people, because this will take more time.
And also redistribution of funds.
Exactly.
So whenever we get like kind of, so for example, this video game, we actually convinced the German embassy and the Goethe Institute to pitch in the money. So we're really trying, whenever we get funding for a project, we always make sure that we do the production, the post-production with local people. So we also try to make sure that whatever we have as production funds actually really stays with these communities.
I love using art to get money from European countries or European institutions and giving to the people, like you and people. Like, this is amazing. And this is what we are doing a lot, like giving the money directly to the community. This is why, like, well, we do it a lot of our own post-production, but when it's like more like complex things, we always find like a people there that are part of the process.
Exactly.
Interesting. I think we have room for one question, and then we'll proceed with the next section.
Hi, thanks so much for your work. I would love to hear a little bit more about the thinking process behind the form. So you seem to be working with different forms, and I would love to understand how that comes about. Like, when does the thing, is it the material that informs whether it will be a game or will it be a documentary? Could you speak about the thinking process behind the form?
I think it just arrives, like it just comes naturally with the format, no?
Yeah, like I think when you are a multimedia artist, this means that you don't think in one media or one form, one material. Do you think more in the idea? Like the idea coming as a natural, like, they just like appear at some point in the process to research. And at some point, do you feel that, okay, here is the concept that we want, or here is the most interesting comment or question that you want to create, and after that, the way that we'll do it is like try to understand what is the best media to represent this idea.
Often it comes also with like kind of, we are often drawing from like kind of the local aesthetics, no? Yeah. Like, hey, what was it? How would it be? How would a business simulation video game about this topic that everybody uses look like? How would it be to use a PisoNet computer as like kind of the video screen in an installation? No, how would it be to use a crypto miner but using it as like kind of a media player? And also very often we actually draw the form, or the form often comes from the local aesthetic of
materials,
from the local materials.
But also like we are more like a new media artists. Of course, like we are like also will research about digital realities. This means that doing a research like that and creating a paint or a very traditional sculpture will be very difficult, because at the end the easy way to go will be like using the tools and the media that are more connecting with these own realities, and most of the projects are shaping in this like direction.
So for the second part,
go ahead.
Maybe we wanted to like kind of show you like kind of a work in progress work, which is part of, for those of you who were here this morning, which is part of our social life of crypto research project. Also, Nestor is the artist in residence for this project, and so we were thinking currently about like kind of installations work that like kind of directly grow out of this ongoing like kind of cryptocurrency research, no? And as you've seen with Memoria, with our last piece, we're venturing more and more into like a territory of doing ethnography, maybe as some kind of speculative, like kind of future facing practice. And I just wanted to like kind of say why I believe this is a legitimate thing to do as an ethnographer, not just like kind of focus on what the reality is, but also engage in some kind of speculation practice. No, I find this notion very interesting, that speculation can also be like kind of a method, no? Because like kind of speculation models a bit how futures, or like kind of points us to the fact that futures are also actively made in the present, no? Like we've met so many people, thinkers, we do research with people who are also building the future, no? Because they're technologists, they have a business idea in the crypto world, no? So speculation is also something we observe a lot, no? And speculation is also something our research participants do a lot, no? Also, this collaborative aspect, no, working with communities. I think making a collaborative fiction is also like kind of an interesting way of collaboration, no, like kind of drawing, asking how do the people who are actually living the things we're studying, no, how do they believe, what do they believe, where like a particular technology can like kind of lead us to, no, where like kind of specific trajectories like kind of go, no, and yeah. Also, this idea of making uncertainty somehow legible, no? Like kind of, we talked this morning a lot about volatility and indeterminacy, no? Like kind of Axie Infinity players or cryptocurrency investors, no? Having to do with like kind of volatility. And we believe that like kind of speculation and art making are also like kind of ways to deal with like kind of uncertainty, no? And like kind of then also going beyond representation, going beyond merely ethnographically describing reality, contemporary reality as it is, but also maybe intervening in it, no? Like kind of engaging in more experimental, performative forms of knowledge practice. Yeah, and also acknowledging that speculation has become very much an everyday practice and also like kind of a mundane activity, no? Like kind of people who migrate make a speculation, take a bet on the future, no? People who do platform labor take a bet on the future. People who engage in crypto trading take a bet on the future, no? And like kind of we believe that making a speculative, co-creative project actually creates a room for that. Yeah. And the project that we have come up with in Cuba that we've been working on for almost a year now, and that we filmed during our last fieldwork trip to Cuba in February, March, April last year, is a project that is called Oracle Index, and that engages exactly in these questions of speculation that we just talked about. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with this platform, but this is Polymarket. Polymarket is a cryptocurrency-based platform where people can bet on the outcomes of real-world events. And on Polymarket, you can, for example, buy or sell shares of an outcome before it happens. So, and as the news changes, prices change, no? Interestingly, you can bet on all kinds of things, no? Who will Trump nominate as the next Fed chair? Who will be the Time 25 person of the year? Where will Bitcoin stand 1 year from now? No. This is a massive platform now in the US and growingly everywhere in the world. And interestingly, Polymarket doesn't market itself only as a betting platform, but also as a form of collective intelligence, and maybe even as a future form of journalism, no? Because the prices basically show what a large group of people believes to happen, no? And it became quite popular actually because it basically predicted, that was the first place that really showed a very clear favor for Trump during the last American elections. No, so it really became famous for having correctly predicted Trump's election. And this moment also obviously had a direct impact on Cuba, because as we're seeing now, any shift in US policy affects the island, no?
And it's actually like when we'll start to working with that, this like nobody know this platform, and right now it's like incredible popular globally.
Yeah.
And it's like in all the news.
Yeah. The problem with it is obviously that it's very prone to market manipulation, no? And this has also been happening. So people are arguing that this platform is not only predicting the future, but also actively influencing it, no? And this is like basically when our curiosity began, no? At the same time, we were also researching how Cubans were using cryptocurrencies, no? Axie Infinity, as here in the Philippines during the pandemic, created this whole informal economy, young Cubans playing for many hours a day to earn tokens. Crypto as this form of survival, no? And then seeing these two phenomena together, prediction markets influencing politics and cryptocurrencies shaping everyday life, led us to this question: what would actually happen if an entire country reorganized itself around speculation? Now, what would happen if prediction markets became the basic infrastructure of government? And what would happen if Cuba, under extreme pressure from the outside, would turn to blockchain as its last line of economic survival? And this is basically how our project emerged, no? Just to give you a bit of context, like the intellectual foundations of prediction market systems such as polymarket come from this extropian movement, no, which is like kind of this futuristic Silicon Valley philosophies from the 1980s and 1990s. That's also where the ideas for cryptocurrencies were first like kind of discussed, no? And extropians basically believed that technology could overcome human limits, build a decentralized, optimized society, humanism combined with libertarianism, constant improvement, open information systems with minimal state control. No, that is like kind of the intellectual fertile ground of all these ideas of crypto and technological decentralization. No, and from this ecosystem emerged a concept that is called futarchy. Here with this article, Shall We Vote on Values but Bet on Beliefs by Robin Hanson. And he basically proposed a radical governance model which was widely debated in crypto circles at the time, or cryptography circles at the time. And the idea is, in that system, the government only defines the social goals, but prediction markets decide which policies are the most effective ones. So speculators basically would bet on their beliefs, and that would is in this idea like kind of a much more functioning, a much more effective like kind of form on government, no? So Robin Hanson in his text always said that he believes futarchy is ideologically neutral, no? Because the outcomes should still be, like the goals should still be set by the government, no? Whether a hyper-capitalist or a hyper-social ones. And the market logic, the market mechanism only comes into play to like kind of forecast the success of politics. So what we did for our project was to imagine a Cuba maybe 10 years from now, in which like kind of in which the government adopts such a system, no? And in our imagination, it adopts that system because of outside pressure from the government, no? Like kind of we imagine Trump maybe in a third term, putting a complete global economic embargo on the island, the island being completely shut off from everything, oil, food deliveries, whatever. Now we have to say we imagined the scenario 1 year ago, and it's basically happening now and not in 2030. So reality was a bit faster as in our imagination.
The United States is deploying advanced aerial and naval assets across the Caribbean as part of a comprehensive air and maritime blockade of Cuba. The Pentagon has not publicly acknowledged what type of aircraft and hardware was used, but now we know. Most times they've used what's known as the MQ-9 Reaper drone. These are typically armed with missiles designed to destroy enemy tanks and cost about $3,500 per hour to fly. Now, these military assets have been spotted at U.S. military outposts in El Salvador and Puerto Rico, according to photo and satellite imagery obtained by CNN. And even now, more military assets are on their way. That includes a massive aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald Ford. It is the centerpiece of what officials describe as a full-scale enforcement operation, effectively isolating Cuba from regional air and maritime traffic.
So this is basically news footage that we collected when we developed the project. There was stuff just happening in Venezuela, no? The USS Gerald Ford moving to Venezuela. And now 2 months later, we're actually already in the point where we don't see like kind of a military blockade of the island, but effectively the Trump administration has pressured all countries to not deliver oil anymore to Cuba. And we're basically at a situation in Cuba now where like kind of a couple of days from now, the island might be completely without electricity.
Maybe in a week, yeah.
So what we imagined as this future scenario of like kind of Cuba having to find a way to deal with like kind of a complete scenario has already become reality now. Yeah.
Yeah, like the first video, the video that you see was like a fake video that we'll make using like a real footage and like changing the audio. Like
yeah, we basically only changed Venezuela to Cuba.
Exactly, but the reality is just like there. We'll do this video like around like 2 months ago, I think, like more or less, and it's already like happening right now. But this is not part of our project. The reality just happened, and we don't have control with the reality. We'll have control with what we want to do with the project. And the idea was like I tried to create, as Stefan explained, like this idea of like the future Cuba, like what happened. And one of the big questions that we'll try to do is like, okay, all these like phenomena that exist and communities and practice of like related with digital practice or sometimes like religion practice, what will be the future of this practice in this scenario?
So our starting point was again money, and financial infrastructure. What would happen if Cuba is completely like kind of cut off by the US from the rest of the world? How would they still get like kind of hard currency, And we imagine like that the government would maybe decide to introduce these prediction markets where international bettors would like kind of wagger bets, on this like kind of global Cuban platform to like kind of facilitate some dollar or like kind of cryptocurrency inflow into the country. So that is again a pattern that we extrapolated from the reality, because the Cuban state has a couple of schemes to get hard currency from its like kind of remittance sending population. For example, you can like kind of charge mobile phones from outside, and then like kind of you pay in dollars that basically the government also the government remittance system works in a way that people outside of Cuba send real hard currency to their relatives, but the Cuban state basically gives them only like kind of virtual tokens that only work in like kind of government-run supermarkets. So there is these like kind of ways where the Cuban government has tried to siphon off like kind of remittances or like kind of hard currency. And we imagine that such a government system would be their way to like kind of get their hands on cryptocurrency money that comes from outside.
And for us, the metaphor was like, okay, what will happen if all these like social dynamics are just like cryptocurrency, and in this like a scenario that nothing like really nothing get in, nothing get out. And basically we'll use this idea of like an anthropology will go to Cuba in this scenario, in this future reality, and just like doing interviews. And we'll create like a group of like different interviews, but we're also using artificial intelligence to try to generate like videos in connection with some another like on the ground economic like practice like La Bolita. And we're also like creating this idea of like videos from the national TV or videos that from online that try to put more information about what can happen.
So our fiction basically looks like this. The government introduces these prediction markets as a government system to like kind of get their holds on like kind of foreign currencies, but the Cubans themselves, they are like kind of cut off from that. They are not allowed to invest like kind of in the government market. So what happens? So we were thinking through what would happen to society, and our idea was that like kind of speculation becomes, because also there is no like food access to electricity is harder and harder. So what becomes the most pervasive new economic practice? Speculation, Like in our idea, this exclusion from the government prediction market creates these like kind of parallel and improvised markets that enable survival in such a post-embargo crisis economy. So we imagined the society where life feels like a permanent casino and where everything has become a bet. In our ideas, like local people place bets on whether bread will arrive in the shop, whether someone will be able to migrate, whether there will be electricity tonight. And so we imagine that these new clandestine markets basically also, and that's maybe the ethnographic part, that they draw on like kind of long traditions that already exists in Cuba for reading signs, for interpreting destiny, and for betting on the future. And one real world phenomenon we're very fascinated about is
La Bolita.
La Bolita.
La Bolita is basically like, with the revolution, like the Cuban government completely take off all the games and the lotteries that exist in Cuba. Cuba was like, before the revolution, Cuba was like almost like the casino of the United States. And after the revolution, they just like completely stopped all this process. And La Bolita was very interesting because La Bolita used La Charada, that is a kind of like a numerology system that coming from China to try to understand like, elements or materials like, or like literally like, concepts, and try to like connect with numbers. And it's basically a kind of like, nobody know exactly the number of La Bolita coming from where, but mostly it's like a Miami lottery that coming through radio stations, like pirate radio stations, and Cuba using this like a number to try to like find the winner of La Bolita, and it's like a super on the ground like a phenomenon that literally in any corner you can just open your own bank of La Bolita.
Yeah, so it's basically this illegal lottery, no, running like kind of in neighborhoods, because there cannot be an official drawing of the number because it would be too obvious. No, they're just using the Miami ones. But like we interviewed a lot of people playing in this, playing this illegal lottery, and what we find very fascinating, yeah, is that they try to derive like kind of the numbers that they believe that they're winning from their dreams or from like kind of everyday like kind of encounters. No, and this numerological system that comes from 19th century Chinese mythology, La Charada, no, is basically this like long code of like kind of numbers connected to like kind of different things. No, for example, 24 is Paloma. It's like what's the English word? Like a pigeon, yeah, or like kind of 31 can be like 20 is like kind of a cat. No, so people, bolita players, and this is a tradition of like almost 100 years in Cuba, no, that people try to remember their dreams, or like kind of if they see a drunk person on the street or someone who wears a sweater with a particular color, no, all of this gives you hints on like kind of what numbers to bet on. So there's really a huge cultural practice around that.
In the video we are sharing today, you can see also like how they connect one number with another number to create another combination of like meetings. So that is very interesting.
Yeah. And then also another cultural form of like kind of speculation is the famous Ifa oracle from the Afro-Cuban Santeria. No? So in moments of crisis, Cubans have always turned to divination practices for spiritual guidings. And in the Ifa oracle, Babalaos, no, religious expert, cast these like cowrie shells to generate an odu, like kind of a sign connecting like kind of 8 numbers that offers like warnings or advice or prophecies. No, and in our future Cuba scenario, these sacred practices of the Santeria, but also La Bolita, they kind of continue. So traditional oracles coexist with digital tools, spiritual intuition blends with data flows, and this is kind of the scenario that we like kind of try to develop. And in terms of form, this installation is not like kind of a single documentary or film, but we imagine this as like kind of as an imaginary ethnography. So our work is basically all the fictional archive of a future anthropologist, who lives and conducts fieldwork in Cuba, takes interviews, films on the streets, writes notes in this Cuba in the 2030s. And this idea of imaginary ethnography is very much inspired by sci-fi writers such as Ursula Le Guin, who used anthropological formats and structures and methods to describe fictional or speculative cultures. So again, combining ethnography with this idea of world building.
And now we can share like some like segment of the video materials, and after we can like explain a little bit more about that.
Exactly. So this archive that this fictitious anthropologist has collected basically combines news material from like kind of international but also local news, interviews with particular like kind of people who live in this like kind of world of constant betting and speculation, La Bolita players, babalaos, and their customers, paqueteros, but also like kind of dreams that like kind of Bolita players like kind of dreamt or like kind of retell this anthropologist to describe like kind of what numbers they like kind of wanted to bet on. Yeah, this is one of the like kind of Cuban TV news we created.
Hora decisiva. Nación asediada por el criminal bloqueo económico del gobierno de los Estados Unidos responde una vez más con inteligencia, valentía y soberanía. En medio del recrudecimiento de las sanciones, en plena implementación de la llamada opción cero, que busca asfixiar por completo a nuestro pueblo, mapa económico global, nosotros resistimos, nos reinventamos y avanzamos.
Compatriotas, hoy quiero hablarles de frente para explicar con total transparencia y orgullo la decisión económica más trascendental de nuestra historia reciente, la creación de la plataforma de predicción soberana de Cuba y el lanzamiento del token digital soberano.
Yeah, maybe I can go with
cada predicción.
Let me, because like will be more videos and it's like very,
Yeah.
but maybe I can go there with the videos and we can reproduce from there, from this section.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
Hace poco tiempo entramos en bloqueo total, tuvimos que entrar en una. Dime, ¿va a querer ¿tienes predicciones? No. ¿Sin predicción? Ok. ¿Vas a pagar en Bombín? Sí, verdad. Antes el paquete era para entretener, con sus series, novelas, su reggaetón, sus películas de superhéroes. El disco duro era como la ventana al mundo. Y ya no solo es copia y pega, nosotros también recogemos información. Yo soy prácticamente que recojo las apuestas como si fueran votos electorales, pero digital. Y hablamos de los temas que le importan a cada cual. Mira, ahora te voy a mostrar cómo funciona esto con los clientes. Sígueme.
Llama. ¿Quieres que te traiga?
La gente ahora empezó a apostar en serio, no por juego, sino por intuición, por visión. Hay gente que vive de eso. Buenas, Mari. Está bien, está bien. Ya pago. Yo he visto señoras que nunca tocaron un teléfono, pero ahora tú las ves dictándole al nieto las apuestas. Pon que en mayo va a caer un ciclón de categoría 3, que lo soñé con mi difunto. Bueno, hasta mañana, Marilyn.
Hasta mañana.
Y pum, le cae. Y son 12 mambis libres directos a su monedero. Más que cualquier pensión.
Una noche 910655. 55. El día 3 fue 29, 30 y 16. Y ahora me dijiste que fue 78, 90, 94. No te dieron centenas. 478. Ajá. No es por nada. Y bueno, la bolita es un juego de números donde interviene la suerte, los sueños, y todo es a través de números, el significado de los números. Las autoridades saben que la gente juega, el cubano juega, pero no puede hacerse así libremente, ¿entiendes? Tengo aquí, por ejemplo, la numerología. Cada charada tiene el significado del número. La china, la cubana, la matancera, la india, la hindú y la charada santera. Y cada palabra tiene varios números. ¿No ves? Flauta tiene 5 y 47, son flautas. Flor tiene muchísimos, porque está flor amarilla, que es 45. Flor blanca, que es 50. Flor acacia, que es 13 y 86. Hay sueños que te dan el número, o no se sabe si es coincidencia o es que la persona lo soñó. ¿Entiendes? Dependencia. Entonces tú dices, ay, soñé con ratón, anoche soñé con ratón. Y cuando tiran el número, tú dices, ay, si es 29 ratón. Oigo, buena, ¿cómo estás, Emma? Aquí nadie juega con lujo, jugamos porque nos queda de otra. A veces un número es la única esperanza que te queda. Ah, bueno. ¿Ya sabes un número?
Entonces me dijiste 20 mambises,
Sí.
20 mambises y 20 mambises.
Sí.
Ya.
Sí, mi amor.
¿Listo? ¿Listo?
Sí.
La bolita es el juego del pueblo. Sí, no es solo un número, es interpretar señales. Es que todo está conectado. Lo que sueñas, con lo que te pasó en el día, lo que te dice la gente. Ya la charada es la clave, ¿entiendes? Es un código donde cada cosa tiene un número. Antes, la bolita se medía por la lotería de Miami. Sí, nosotros esperábamos el sorteo y de ahí sacamos el ganador. ¿Qué pasa? Luego, el bloqueo se puso feo, todo se complicó y nosotros tuvimos que inventar. Y entonces llegó Sobex. Llegó Sobex con sus apuestas y esa fue la jugada perfecta. El sistema del mercado de gobierno, todos los días, cierra con un número de apuestas nuevas. ¿Ya? Con un número fijo de apuestas nuevas. Ese es nuestro número principal. Por ejemplo, si el gobierno cierra con 13 apuestas nuevas, Entonces 13 es el número fijo. El gobierno cree que los únicos que pueden predecir el mercado son los expertos, pero nosotros llevamos siglos interpretando señales.
Okay, these are the interviews. And now we are sharing some of the artificial intelligence videos.
Yeah, which are the dreams that we collected with like deals with
Fue en abril. Había una ola de apuestas en el barrio sobre cuántos vecinos iban a emigrar ese mes. Y yo sentía que tenía una corazonada con el número, pero no sabía si jugarlo o no. Me fui para casa del babalao. Él hizo la consulta y salió obundaoso. Me explicó que ese signo habla de caminos que se abren por el sacrificio ajeno. Que el éxito puede venir observando lo que hacen los otros y aprendiendo sin envidia. Me dijo que el número que soñé no era casualidad, pero que si lo usaba, tenía que compartir la ganancia con alguien que estuviera pasando trabajo. La suerte no viene sola, me dijo. Al final gané una pequeña cantidad, pero cumplí. Yo no voy con eso de que con la gloria se olvidan las memorias.
Soñé que no había luz, pero todo brillaba. Las farolas apagadas brillaban con un resplandor azul como si sonaran con electricidad. En mi casa, en vez de bombillos, habían peces luminosos flotando. Uno se me acercó y me dijo, no es que falta la luz, es que cambió de dueño. Bajé por las escaleras y vi un montón de gente encendiendo velas con susurros. Cada palabra era una chispa. Alguien murmuró transparencia y la vela explotó. Me desperté en medio de un apagón real. Busqué el número de la charada en vela, que es el 26. Por eso lo jugué, porque me pareció que el sueño era más real que el apagón mismo. O al revés.
Y así he tenido sueños que he estado pescando y de pronto, como 3 o 4 perros me fueron arriba. Y entonces yo como que lo grabo en el sueño. Lo digo, coño, ese es el número, lo pienso. Qué buen número los perros esos. Y al otro día lo juego. ¿Qué es lo que es perro? Perro grande 95, perro mediano 75. Y digo, bueno, voy a jugar el perro grande que es el que me... Pero no me ha dado nunca resultado en los sueños. Sí, eso es complejo.
Yo llegué abalado, desesperado por mis deudas. Había sacado varios microcréditos para invertir en predicciones de bolívares, de temas que estaban calientes en mi barrio. Y al final todo eso salió mal. Al consultar el babalao me dijo que no debería arriesgar tanto mi crédito en cosas que no tenían tanto sentido. Al final el perro tiene 4 patas y coge por un solo camino. Me habló del eleguá y del haché para abrir los caminos a la prosperidad y como algunos caminos me vendrían bien para mi futuro y otros podían ser una pérdida eminente. Me dijo que utilizara una miniestra de maíz como ofrenda para ponerle al pie de la ceiba que está en la esquina de mi casa. Para las buenas vibras, tú sabes, antes de hacer cada puerta. Esa misma tarde, enfocado, puse todas mis tareas en orden, pero al final todavía sigo hasta el cuello.
Yeah, so in conceptual terms, we found it very interesting to work with like kind of artificial intelligence because it's also the ultimate prediction machine, no? So so we find this like our interest in like kind of systems of prediction like kind of very much actually like kind of mirrored in artificial intelligence, no? And also like kind of what it like kind of predicts when you're prompting a scene taking place in Cuba, no, what it actually predicts how this was like kind of looked like. So this is yeah, why we decided to work with generative AI.
Yeah, like also the way that we'll use artificial intelligence is like try to find the mistakes in the construction of this like realities. This is why like look very weird and like almost like experimental and surrealistic. And also like for us was like a very interesting tool for understand like to try to show something that doesn't exist. Because at the end, this is the way that artificial intelligence work. Like they are like creating a kind of like a forms using like a database that is already like something that exists, and it's a kind of like a metaphor of dreams. We are creating something that doesn't exist, taking like using the information that we have in our brain, literally, and we'll think that this was like a very poetic way to also find a way to represent these dreams. And the audios are like original, like real interviews that we'll make with people, with real people. The video is the only thing that we'll create. Another thing that will create, as you can maybe you remember in the interview, like a couple of times, do you see that like this kind of like a weird device that they're using for exchange like cryptocurrency? These are all like create for the project, and this is our way to also like creating more like a kind of like a base technology reality in this like futuristic.
Yeah, and also again like kind of produced with these like kind of communities. So we have a 2-minute sign, so maybe we just show how the installation is going to look like. So no, as it's like kind of a non-linear film that is like basically an archive of clips, of clips collected by this imaginary anthropologist. We're gonna show this as like kind of an LED screen that is basically fed by like kind of 4 old cryptocurrency miners that we bought on like kind of the secondhand market, and each server is basically has like kind of each server has like kind of an archive of videos, and they're basically competing against each other in like kind of a cryptographic process, no? Because mining cryptocurrency, mining Bitcoin is also basically a lottery process, no? So like kind of it's a mathematic puzzle, and crypto Bitcoin miners are constantly guessing numbers until with like brute force, best computer power, the fastest one normally like kind of solves the cryptographic puzzle, but it's actually just a lottery process. So yeah, our video basically, or our installation basically uses the blockchain as a narrative generating device. No, so we set up a software that is basically very much based on the Bitcoin blockchain software, and yeah, and these 4 servers basically compete against each other. Mining the next block of our narrative, like kind of, which means screening the next video from their archive and sending it to like kind of the main screen. This is how we're gonna present it. It's still very much work in progress. We have premiere in October in Madrid in Media Lab Matadero, but this is how it's gonna look like.
We love this idea of like using the technology in a way that is also like like the technology also like connecting with the way that the narrative work inside the project. And this is exactly what we are doing here, using the mining's computers as a kind of like a media players, but also the narratives change all the time because the computational like communication between the minings is like just like a random creating this like a line of videos, an order of videos.
That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, maybe we have time for 2 questions. Talagang nilimitahan ko na 2 questions. So, if we want to finish on time. But, I mean, hi everyone. We've just reached another frontier and maybe another set of questions or insights based on the second part of today's session. Anyone? Hi, go ahead, ma'am.
Hello. Yeah. I would just like to say to Nestor that how you describe La Bolita is exactly how my grandmother would bet on in the Philippines sweating and ending. So exactly like that. Like she would bet on numbers based on her dreams and on her birth dates of our relatives. And how you interpret the dreams is also the way how she interpreted it. Like honestly, it's almost the same, it's just a different name for it. So
But is there also a numerological system that connects a number to a specific symbol?
But as there's no system, but really it's more of a random picking based on dreams. But that's that's my experience with the art you were presented.
Every day I feel more like in at home here. It's like every day I discover something that is like, oh yeah, exactly like Cuba. Like it's not just the weather, it's like the culture, and it's like we are very happy to also like the connection with Philippines was like to try to create this like links. I'm very happy that exists in a so deep way.
It was very resonant. A lot of the videos actually were very similar to the architectural spaces here as well. So amazing. It was AI generated as well. Okay, other questions? Okay, go ahead, Abby. Yeah, because it's being streamed. I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Abby. I'm from the creative side of the building from the UP Film Institute. First off, thank you for sharing the work in progress because it's really crazy, and I mean it in the most exciting and amazing sense of being crazy. I receive it as you're doing an ethnographic work of data around you from the present moment in order to imagine a future that's slowly becoming an impending truth. Isn't that crazy, guys? So my question here is because I can see that it's also inviting people who are going to see the work into that ethnographic space. And I know that oftentimes artists are always conflicted with the word ethnography as a practice. It's questioned all the time, same as in the research part where ethnography is also questioned. And I like it that you said earlier that art is inherently research. And I really love it that students get to hear that. So my question is it really ethnography or you think it's becoming to be something else?
I mean, we played a lot in our conceptual thinking with this term of like kind of imaginary ethnography, So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with this like kind of 1970s feminist like kind of strand on science fiction, Ursula Le Guin, who, I mean, she really wrote science fiction stories, but she structured them as ethnographic monographs, So it wouldn't be a regular novel with a main character that goes from like kind of A to Z, but very often her books are like collections of poems, songs, local myth of like kind of a fictitious like kind of community, And her parents are actually both were anthropologists, So she really comes from a tradition of anthropology to like kind of make fiction. And I feel her work is very much rediscovered at the moment, at least in Europe and the US. You basically cannot go to any contemporary art biennial without any reference to her carrier bag theory of fiction. I mean, Anna Tsing is also drawing a lot in her work. So there is this cultural moment, I feel, where like kind of in the arts, like kind of this work is like kind of read a lot again, like kind of science fiction and anthropology. Like somehow it's really coming together at the moment in the art world. And I think that is a moment that inspires us a lot.
Yeah, also from an art perspective, it's like, politic art, like documentaries, together with like a very conceptual art, also like, relational aesthetic. They are all like, very solid, mediums or forms or concepts that are using interacting with like people, creating different scenarios, like even like performative form of art. Like they are not so far away for what we are doing right now.
And this notion of world building, I see a lot of artists nowadays trying to create their own like kind of worlds with their own like kind of internal logics. I think this is also like kind of a contemporary art movement I'm very fascinated about at the moment.
I think what is like maybe like happen more right now in contemporary art is like the multimedia approach, create like different medias in the same time. Like, do you have like a sculptural element? Do you have like the videos as a kind of like a narrative way? But you have also like another like technology as a base to create like a this like a
creating an environment almost.
Exactly.
No?
But most interesting from my personal point of view, most interesting like art form right now are using that, like trying to engage the audience in different ways. And I think it's a very like interesting like feel when you can even like connect with more traditional form of art, but in a way that I don't know, it's like more interactive in some way. And this is very, this is very, very already maybe all form of art in what we understand with like, contemporary art feel globally, I think.
Thank you. Thank you. Very helpful. But
Thank you
can
for the
I like
question.
a short follow-up? So are the shot scenes following a script, or is it also organic?
Half and half. Some of them are very documentary. So, for example, this interview with this older woman who plays Bolita is basically a real kind of interview because we wanted to have a video that basically explains the process. No, other ones like with this Paquetero are a bit more scripted, but still we kind of develop the character with him, so it's his words. No, but still there was this kind of co-created process, so it's like kind of half-half. I think our interview with Babalao, who explains the Ifa oracle, was also more documentary. So yeah, we try to mix.
Completely, yeah.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Wow, thank you. Maybe one last call for people online. Okay, Shine, you will be the last one. I apologize. We are a bit scrimped on time.
Yeah,
but
it was our fault, if we're honest.
We're genuinely curious. So go ahead, Shine.
Sorry, it's a race and I made it. My curiosities, I'm also from the Department of Communication Research, but more recently I have been finding myself in art spaces and art communities. And there is a lot of contention in the use of AI in contemporary art. And so since we also have students here and perhaps colleagues who would want to explore this avenue for creation, I would like to ask how you direct yourselves, or what are the parameters that you follow insofar as the conditions for using AI in art making is concerned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a question right now. I think from an art perspective, this is like, I think it's very old question. Like to understand our history, like when like let's think what happened when photography, like cameras was created. Like this create this question about the originality of the representation, like what happened with paint. I think it's just an older tool. Like at some point, I hope that as soon as possible, art feel already naturalized that. I am myself a painter, but I completely understand art not just as a manual ability. I understand art as a kind of like a more deep or conceptual, approach. And I think it's completely legitimate, like a good paint, but also a good photography. And artificial intelligence as a tool is something that we are learning to use. And I hope that in the future we can understand more about, okay, this is a good way to use artificial intelligence. And this will, set up the question.
I would also say there's lazy and creative forms of use of it, no?
Yeah.
And for this project, it just felt it made conceptual sense, no? If you do a work on speculation and prediction, you have to include the ultimate prediction machine. That was just our thinking.
And I, to finish, I was like in a conference when this question was like coming again and again. And I remember like one answer that was like very interesting. As a new media artist, don't working with the most interesting and sophisticated technology available right now is not an option. Like if you are an artist and you are there and you are interested about digital things, like don't working with artificial intelligence, I think it's like not a good way to go. Like it's my opinion about that. But the end, it's a lot of question about the use of artificial intelligence from an ecology perspective and like, surveillance and the platforms and the big data about that. It's like an older thing that I think is like more interesting right now.
Okay. All right. A round of applause for that marathon that we just ran with them. So, sadly, our time is limited, but I'm sure that there will be a bit of mingling later. So don't worry, Stefan and Nestor are still with us up until later. So feel free or do not be afraid to come up to them later. We are not fearful. We are at the final frontier. Okay, so let's move on, therefore, to the rest of our program. Are you guys amenable to taking a picture with them? All right, let's start with picture taking for a bit. All right. Kuya Alex, saan niyo po gusto? Okay, so would it be okay, Stefan and Nestor, to sit over here so that it's a crowd picture?
Tayo na lang po. They just stand up and the rest, and all of us will stand behind them. Okay. Would you please stand up? Okay. Yeah. Bakit pa lang po tayo? Okay.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
Closer na lang po para magkasya sa frame.
Seats, you are still going to be here for a bit, all right? Because it is time for the closing remarks, as this is still an official event that requires what we long for the most, closure. And to begin with the closing remarks, we have Sir John Alu Sanuan Labor of the Communication and Research Department. Applause!
Thank you so much, Jika. I'll read this on behalf of the college. First things first, as we bring this event to a close, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to our friends from and colleagues from Aarhus University, right? Stefan and Nestor. And I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to the people and institutions who made today's event possible. First, to Dean Diosa Labise, who is currently in the Senate, exercising her right as a dean and as a member of the UP community. Thank you for your steady leadership and for nurturing the college that continue to take media and communication scholarship seriously, critically, and courageously. To the UPCMC Office of Research and Publication, headed by Patrick. Thank you. And of course, Alex, thank you for the tireless work behind the scene events like this on careful coordination, intellectual generosity, and admin care, all of which you provide with excellence. To our colleagues from the UP CMC Department of Communication and Research, headed by Professor Julian, thank you for sustaining a culture of inquiry that is rigorous, reflexive, and socially grounded, as well as to our colleagues from the UP Broad and, of course, the UP Film, as well as the UP Journal departments. We also deeply are grateful to our friends and colleagues from across our institutions, the University of the Philippines, Diliman College of Arts and Letters, College of Fine Arts. We also have reps from the Open University. We have friends from the Ateneo who were here a while ago, and our friend from the De La Salle University. Thank you so much for being here. Your presence reminds us that scholarship is never solitary. Again, there's an open invitation from a good friend, Chong, from Fine Arts to collaborate, right, within and outside the university. So we can do that. So thank you. Maraming salamat for all the students who are here, and I hope that you get inspired to just do your thing creatively, critically, and make the college proud. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you po, Dr. Labor. And now it is time to present the certificates of appreciation to our two dearest speakers. So may I request Doc Julian and Sir Junel to please come up to the front. And of course, Steffen Köhn and Nestor Siré to receive the certificates of appreciation and the tokens of appreciation as well. The College of Media and Communication, more specifically, the Department of Communication Research, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your practice with us. All right, let's take a picture. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Now, for some final announcements, for everyone that has attended this event, please, if you want to get your, what do you call this? Certificates of participation, because this is an official event, there are QR codes littered around the room, 2 of which are attached to the air conditioning units. And by the door, there are QR codes there, technology. Let's use them and obtain gratification via certificates of participation. And lastly, you love this. There are snacks outside. So snack away, mingle with the rest of the department, of the Communication Research Department. Enjoy the view that we have in the College of Media and Communication. Once again, thank you so much. Ay, may pahabol po pala.
Thank you so much, our friends from PIDS PIDS. Thank you for staying the entire day. Okay? Maraming salamat.
Wow. Now we're trying